Welcome back to the Blueprint to Ultra podcast with your hosts, Steve Epifano and Jeff Winchester. Listen, our goal with this podcast is to help you put together your plan for your next ultra. And we do that by interviewing a variety of guests from those at the back of the pack all the way up to the front of the pack, with the hope that you will learn something from their experiences that you will either add to your blueprint, and in some cases, maybe decide that you don't want to add. But neither here nor there. Our guest today, though, if you have ever considered running a 200-mile race or want to learn the secrets of running a 200-mile race, then our guest today is going to provide you with some perspective. Maybe you can do them, maybe you shouldn't do them. However you want to interpret that, we'll let you decide after you listen to what he has to say. But from what I can see, he has completed what looks to be 14 200-plus mile races, including the Cocodona 250 5 times, Moab 240 2 times, the Bigfoot 200 3 times, the Tour de Jance. And I apologize, I don't speak Italian. I call it the Tour de Jance. It's a 330-kilometer race. He's done that 2 times, the Tahoe 200, the Divide 200, and a laundry list of other race distances, including, if I remember correctly, I think it's called the Grand to Grand Ultra, which is a 170-plus mile race. So it's not just 200s. He's done a lot of others, but we're going to focus today on the 200 realm. And yet, if you were to ask him, he didn't start running until 2022, because he was an avid hiker prior to that. He started in 2014 as a thru hiker and got into the sport of ultra running through hiking. He has hiked the Tahoe Rim Trail, the Colorado Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, as well as trails all around the world. And he's done a lot of time on his feet. And so with that, we want to welcome to our show, Mr. Aaron Fleisher. And Aaron, did I say that wrong? Fleisher or Fleisher?
Fleisher, yeah, you nailed it.
Perfect.
You got it.
Perfect. Aaron,
thanks for having me.
We are excited to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
So I need you to do me a favor. Make it make sense, right? I said you started running and became a runner, if you will, in 2022, but yet you began as a thru hiker and decided you want to start signing up for races. So take me to this idea. To me, thru hiking is cool. You could have done any of these courses, like the Cocodona 250. You could go out there and thru hike that all day long, like forever. You can do it for as long as you want. But you chose to sign up for a race. Was it because you wanted aid stations? Is it that you wanted cutoffs? Like, why did you convert from a thru hiker to running races?
I didn't know that this ultra running world existed until I hopped on the Pacific Crest Trail. And it starts down at the California-Mexico border. And they run the PCT 50 miler down there. And I coincidentally ran into them on my first day. So around mile 20, I believe, is where that race, there's either an aid station or it starts and ends there if it's out and back. I don't know the course that well. So I was 20 miles into the Pacific Crest Trail, and I thought I actually ran into my first trail magic. And I found out quickly that it wasn't. They were like, "Are you part of the race?" And I was sort of like, "Well, what race?" And this is just for people that are running the PCT 50. And so I learned it was 50 miles, and my head about exploded. I thought it was the craziest thing ever. These people were running 50 miles in a day. So I went out on the PCT and I stepped aside the trail and I cheered a bunch of people on and told them I thought that they were insane for running 50 miles in a day. They obviously thought I was insane because I was about to be walking 2,700 miles across the country. And so I think that was the first sort of seed maybe in the back of my head that was planted. I really knew nothing about that world. And plus, I wasn't a runner. I honestly didn't grow up running. I played a lot of sports like soccer and these kind of things. But you don't mind running when you're playing in the sport. But aside from that, I just thought it was like completely stupid. Like, why would someone do something fun? And so I think that was the first ultra seed that was planted. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until afterwards. And my dad, I believe starting later in his 50s, actually, started running some marathons, so running the rock and roll marathons, a lot of these kind of things later in his 50s. And he eventually was diagnosed with men's breast cancer. And I wanted to actually pick a race, and he's a survivor and recovering very well. But I wanted to pick a race to actually raise money. And that's how I ended up in the Grand to Grand originally to begin with in 2019, is because I was like, I kind of want to pick a race and kind of raise money for this cause and raise some sort of amount of awareness. But I wasn't a runner. So I intentionally was looking for something that was as long as possible, where I didn't have to run and I could possibly just hike. And so that's honestly how I stumbled upon things like the Grand to Grand. That seemed like the easiest, honestly, it was the path of least resistance for me. because it was structured more. They called it self-supported. Now, my version of self-supported, what they called their version of self-supported, were two different things. I mean, they were like providing us with like water, and I didn't have to filter water and hot water at the end of the day, and our tents and things like this. And so, and then after that, I caught wind of like the Moab 240, to be honest. And then it was like, wait, you're telling me I don't have to carry a tent and a sleeping bag. They're essentially ongoing trail magic for you. People cheer for you on the way. And so it almost sounded like it was easy. I eventually got very humbled by this idea, I'll be honest, But jumping into it, it was really like the idea of Cocodona 250. By the time I was done through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, you eventually get your trail legs underneath you, and you're kind of knocking out 30-something mile days pretty routinely day after day. Now, that might be sunrise to sunset, and even with taking breaks and stopping and swimming in lakes and having a good time, and you're naturally doing 32s, 33s, 34s. So the idea of me saying, well, I'm going to do 550s, call it, to complete a 250-mile race, and I'm really just kind of cutting out my stoppage time. I can't swim in the lake anymore. I maybe can't have the picnics I used to have, but I'm also carrying less weight, though, too. It made sense to me. Like the distance it didn't seem like it was intimidating. So I wanted to start at the longest distance because it actually seemed like I didn't have to run to go complete it. And it was just a theory. I didn't know if it was true. And Grand to Grand was really the first confidence builder. I actually didn't run a single mile and finished pretty mid-pack. And I had moved my way up the ranks. Everyone starts off running and they kind of slow down, and then the field thins out a little bit. And then I just sort of normally finish like somewhere in the middle. And I think it was a confidence builder. And that inaugural year of Cocodona notoriously was extremely difficult. Steve, I forgot if you were out there, if you started coming out the next year, the 22.
I started coming out in the 2022, so I missed that whole. I probably would have DNF'd if I started in 2021.
Yeah, and in hindsight, it felt like that was my welcome to the community. I mean, it felt like I didn't really know anything, and I didn't know any difference. I mean, people were passed out, people were puking in bushes, completely demoralized. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what to expect. I was out of water too. I mean, it kind of sucked, but it wasn't my first time I was out of water. And so I kind of drew on some prior thru hiking experiences, like things like being in the desert and the PCT. The difference being is that when you're thru hiking some of these trails, you're relying on like crowdsourced apps that a stream might be running and things like this. And in this context, I'm like, I know that they have water at this aid station. I just like have to make it to the next station, you know? And so I think like in hindsight, like that kind of mentality and the experience kind of served me well without really knowing it. And just the idea of like, I wasn't planning on running at all. I was planning on just hiking, and it was still way harder than I thought it was going to be. I think I still had to get pretty humbled being out there, that the 50 miles in conditions like that was way harder than I thought it was going to be. I also didn't know anything about electrolytes. I mean, coming where I was coming from like through hiking, I literally carried a bag of like pink salt, and I'd like put it on my tongue. And if it felt like it tasted good, I ate more salty food. If it felt like it tasted bad, it was good. And like, you didn't know all the science and information that is really available today. And so
let me interrupt you for just a second, because I want to go back to something, because you dove into Cocodona, which is fantastic, because we're going to spend a good amount of time on it in just a minute as well. But for those listening, when you say that your plan was just to hike it, they're going to say, okay, hiking, walking, what do you mean, that type of thing? And you're saying, well, as a thru hiker, you were trying to, you typically would average like 30 miles a day, sun up to sundown type of extent. You'd be taking, baths, swimming in the lake, whatever you're doing, just hanging out, enjoying the environment. As a race itself, and you were saying you were targeting 50 miles for Cocodona, for example, what kind of pace were you looking at? Like, is that for the total 24 hours to hit 50 miles? Did you split it up? Like did you go 50 miles in 16 to 20 hours and sleep for 4? Like, how did you choose to spend those 50 miles as a hiker, if you will?
I don't know if I got that granular. It's just like big picture. That's how I looked at it, was that you started the race on a Monday to be done by Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like it was 5 days, seemed like it was 50 miles a day. And I felt like I probably would be able to do that with relatively the same time I used to go sunrise to sunset with less gear and less stoppage time. It obviously did not turn out to be like that. I mean, I was later on in a race like that. It just, everything took longer. It was harder than I thought. And I was scrounging for sleep at every bit I get and hallucinating. And these were all new experiences that I didn't know I was jumping into, but I wasn't expecting it was going to take 24 hours to do each 50 miles. I mean, if I had, I don't think I actually thought about it. I know what you're saying. If I had to guess, 15 to 18 hours, something like that. But that quickly turned into some of those days were probably closer to 20 to 22 is probably was more realistic. And a course like that in those kind of conditions, and not even thinking about, I didn't even know how to really analyze my own strengths and weaknesses. Like, for example, one of my weaknesses is I'm extremely social when I was out there. And I really think about it when you're on the PCT, you're by yourself, when you're sort of managing your own time and you get into a race environment. And it got exciting, and people at the aid station are handing me beers, and I'm hanging out, and all of that's digging into my time. And I'm not even thinking about it. Like, I don't even have a watch. I have no concept of what this is. And, as a side note, I still think I have the self-proclaimed record for Cocodona for the most amount of beers consumed for a finisher, which on that inaugural year was, close to about 15. Never at one single point in time, but it was like, to me, it was like trail magic. Like, I walked in, I joked around. I said, be nice if somebody had a beer. They ran to the truck, they got a beer. Like, it just, and then one thing happened after the next. And so the whole thing was just a really wild ride for me. I really didn't analyze it or have that good of a plan rolling in. Who knows that's kind of where things were going to get kicked off at. It could have gone a different direction very easily. So
I think that's great, and I think the races, the 200 plus races, really lend themselves to thru hikers. Like, you see a lot of thru hikers doing really well in them, and it's because eventually us in the mid to back of the pack, we're going to be hiking eventually sometime. So you guys really just sustain your energy throughout by starting off with hiking instead of blowing yourself up on that first day, and just are able to just keep that consistent moving the whole time. When some of the people may try to go out and run a little bit faster than they should, and then by Lane Mountain, they're done with the race already,
Yeah, I mean, but I would say it was still experimental, right? My thought was, I wonder if I can still complete this, like, continuously and actually not run at all. Like, that was sort of the one of the goals. And I found out just the day before during race check-in that they had this thing called the DFL trophy. And I thought that sounded cool, because to me that meant I was going to maximize my dollars out there. I was going to eat the most amount of food. And so honestly, my goal for the first year coming in was that I was shooting to be the last person to be out there and be out there the longest. It just didn't work out that way. I always joke around with Andre, who got the DFL that first year, that he had sort of stole my award. I did see him at some point, I believe out near that Sedona area, but I just got too much sleep towards the end. There was at one point I just was tired. I think I slept at that inaugural year maybe 6 hours in Sedona, a whole night's sleep almost.
Wow.
And I just felt really good, and I just was ready to get it done, and just kind of hiked it on in from there. So that's not really the way it turned out. I kind of gave up on that goal.
That's fantastic. So let's hang out at Cocodona. So Cocodona 250, this is going to be your 6th time running that race. And you have run it every year since it started, which is a streak that I'm assuming you are going to keep for as long as you possibly can. At least that's what I hear from everybody who's trying to maintain those types of things. So is that true? Like, you're going to keep running it forever, right?
I mean, I have no idea. So, first of all, I don't think that there's been a single year that I've run it that I knew for certain I was going to come back the next year. It's amazing. Like, there's a story, honestly, that was unique almost for each and every year.
That's fantastic.
So I don't know if I'm saying that. And now, I don't know. I mean, they have a lottery system and all this kind of stuff. And, I'm still taking it year by year. So we'll sort of see. Right. But yeah, you asked like the people outside and stuff there. I also feel like I'm on a path of self-improvement until I feel like I've had like sort of my best experience or my best sort of effort out there, which I want to have at some sort of point in time, I'm probably, I mean, maybe that's sort of never, but I probably won't feel content just to be like, all right, that's sort of my end. I mean, maybe if I like feel like, that was like perfect that year, like it felt about as good as it's gonna be. I don't feel like the need to come back specifically because other people are coming back. Like I have a lot of reasons to do Cocodona, and doing it just because like Andrew Glaze is doing it. Like no offense to Andrew, but like that's not the reason why I'm coming back, you know? So there's a lot of other things that, I mean, that attachment to the community, the race obviously has gotten super cool, super beautiful. I love how the course has changed every year. So you can't exactly say it's ever been the same because it hasn't. And then each piece of it each year has its own journey. I mean, I've done every single thing, like, you know, from shooting for a DFL to figuring out what it's going to be like to have a crew, to figuring out what it's going to be like to have pacers, to starting to jump into a path of running to say, hey, what if I learned how to run? I wonder if I could run it faster, to setting a goal and hitting it. And so it's been an interesting progression to play around with, and having that, like, even though the course has changed, having that consistency of one time a year saying like, this is kind of how you sort of measure my own progress of where I'm at in this running journey is fun to have. I don't know if I would want to repeat all the different things I always really do, but this is a fun one. And I love the area. I mean, to me, there's so many other things that I like to explore around Cocodona too. And so like, if you don't mind me like going into it, I mean, like I love the Grand Canyon. There's other thru hikes I want to do in the area. And it brings me to that. It forces me to really come down to that area and do other types of adventures around the race too. And now this year I have like two buddies, for example, that they've never run an ultra and they're signed up for the Flagstaff Crest. And like, I want to be there at the finish line to see them finish their first ultra, you know? And so now I have other goals. Like I finished on Saturday. I finished on Friday night. I finished on Friday morning. Like I want to finish on Thursday so I can rest up and see my friend finish, you know? And so it's been an interesting just progression of how it rolls. And if it continues to kind of go that way, I think I'll continue to ride that wave and kind of leave it there. So,
and now you said, like, I don't want to say like you're looking for that perfect one, but is that based on a time, or is that based on a feeling where you're just like, hey, it may not have been my best time, but I felt the best throughout that race, or like just the whole experience? Like you're like, I'm not going to be able to do that again.
Yeah, I have a feeling that two of them are going to be intertwined together a little bit. I really do. I mean, I'm not looking at a time this year. I mean, I'm aware of like, if I finish on Thursday, I haven't finished on Thursday before, like that's inevitably going to sort of like be a better time. But I've learned out there's too many things I can't control. And just in terms of like, I have no idea what the weather's going to look like that day, or if they're going to do a course reroute, or, I mean, I've not even showed up to the start line healthy and like last year, and I had some like medical issues and things like that. And so there's just some things that's like, it's nice to let go of. Like, I don't have a spreadsheet this year, and I'm focusing on more things I can control, about just getting like my nutrition and electrolytes and water and these kind of other things that I can control, like really dialed in, and knowing what sections of the course and where I want to be during the day and night, maybe just in generalization, and like let the rest of it sort of pan out. So I'm kind of looking forward to like seeing what that is. So I think it's more the former of what you're saying, Steve. It's more of like the feeling of what that looks like. I just have a feeling that that's going to sort of naturally sort of correlate with probably a better time as well.
So I'm kind of caught here because I'm not sure if I want to go more into Cocodona, or I want to pause for a second and kind of move backwards, because we're blown by this idea that in 2022 you decided you're going to start running. Why start running when you're finishing these things as a hiker?
Well, even in 2022, if I don't get my years mixed up, I think I was I did Cocodona and the Triple Crown that year, which was like the first year that was actually possible to do, because the Triple Crown was canceled the year before that. So the idea of doing like the Cocodona and then Tahoe, Bigfoot, and Moab in one year, there was a group of us that, like, I think maybe 4 or 5 of us that had went out there to be the first batch of people to do all those races in 1 year. It was just a big year. And honestly, in hindsight, I don't think, I mean, I know people are even doing way more 200s than that in a year now.
Mm-hmm.
That felt like it was too many for me. I was pretty burnt out that 1 year, even after coming back and doing Moab. I don't know if I would carry that kind of 200-mile load in a year moving forward. I was out to actually hike all of those. Mm-hmm. So in the back, I was fine with training and learning how to run a little bit, but I still sort of thought the strategy of completing them all and just having a good time and letting my body recover to actually, in the big picture, accomplish having all of those adventures in one season. And it was more than just those races. I mean, in that year, I did some crazy thru hikes in Europe. I think after Bigfoot, I left like right away and I hiked like the Alta Via 2 in Italy. And it was a crazy story how I even ended up doing the Triple Crown, the Moab 240, because I thought Bigfoot was the last race I was going to do, took off. And actually, so it was the other way around. I felt like the 200 miles got me in better shape, but I actually enjoyed my thru hiking more, actually, because then I was doing trails that I hadn't done in the past that I just felt way more fit for, and it actually made me just enjoy the views and everything better. It just felt like it was easier to go out and just jump into, like, I didn't have to earn my trail legs, like they were already there, you know? And so, but just coincidentally, I was in Europe. I didn't have a flight home. I ended up coming home, ended up in Vegas, hadn't unpacked my car from Bigfoot, surprised my mom for like her 70th birthday. And at the and I had volunteered for Destination Trail. Like I'd marked a couple courses for them and then ran the course like in Bigfoot. And I emailed them like 2 days before the race. I don't think they've done this anymore. It was like the latest entry they've ever had for like a finisher, but it was like literally, I was in Vegas emailing them with the subject line, "You never know unless you try." And I was like, "Would you guys let me in?" And they emailed me Wednesday night, and I just drove out Thursday, got in Thursday night, and just went out there with no crew, no aid, no drop bags, thru hiker style, and just wrapped up the Triple Crown that year. So, but it was a lot, and I had hiked them all. So I just wanted to provide some context. Like, I know I say like maybe that's where my running journey started, and I think I had hired a coach, Mike McKnight, to kind of teach me just some basics. Mm-hmm. I had never had a coach. I didn't know where to start with running. I didn't know anything about zones or building a base. I didn't want to walk, and so I did learn a lot. I had to start somewhere. So I did start doing some runs on the side, but I still didn't like it. I thought it was like I would have a training plan and they could give me like a long run on a Saturday. And it doesn't matter if it showed it was 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever. I felt like I couldn't even get to the peak I wanted to and back in that. Like I wanted to be out all day in the mountains. And so, and it didn't involve running. And so I think at that point in time, I still had some challenges, even with liking the notion of actually running. It probably wasn't until the next year I even really started to pick that up. So
that's good. To me, I thought you were going to say that the reason you started running was because you were doing some of these races and the cutoffs were beginning to be too close for you. Like I could be really wrong here, but I think the Tour de France or whatever it is, again, I don't know how to pronounce it. I believe they have pretty tight cutoffs, at least in the beginning. Isn't that right?
I was told that. I mean, the first year I ran, yeah, I mean, you can get me all off topic here, just going right down okay. I mean, it's crazy how this niche world works, right? In ultra running, it wasn't until I was course marking in Bigfoot that somebody else on our course marking team had like DNF'd Tour de France and somebody else was congratulating them. And I was just like, what? And they said, "Don't worry, Aaron, one day you'll probably do this race." And I had no idea what it was. And it felt like the universe kept on sending me signals. Then I jumped into Moab that year. And that year that I actually talked about where I just rolled out with a backpack, I met 2 great friends that I have now. And one of them was a Tour de France finisher. And they kind of took me under their wing. And at a certain point in time, they gave me pizza and beer in their van during Moab. And were telling me Tour de France stories. And And it was less about the race, more about the cultural experience. And I think I was sort of like hooked at that point. They were telling me the path of how to get in. And this is at the end of 2022. And at the finish line, I ran into some other 200-mile folks you might know, which is the couple Gabe Peterson and Kevin from Distance to Empty, that podcast. And there are other friends I knew from the 200-mile world. And they said, oh, we're all going to Tour de France next year. And you should throw your name in the hat too. And I thought it took us several years to get in. And I didn't think I was ready. It sounded really intimidating to me. So I was like, let me throw my name in the lottery in 23 and start this multiple year process. I'm not ready. And I got selected right away. And so I was like, I was really
usually how it goes.
Yeah, I was really scared and really intimidated. But no, to answer your question, I really wasn't, even in 22 through all those, I was not threatened with cutoffs with just hiking. In fact, I was bagging lakes, eating food, getting more sleep than probably anybody out there, it felt like, and hiking and finishing mid-packish. And they sort of all varied depending on where. Sometimes it may have been front middle, back middle, but somewhere. Either way, I actually negative split them all too. I think I had gone somewhere around all the way up until Tour de France. I had negative split every 200-mile race I did. So that was a big piece of them. I started them all slow. And I probably met more people than anybody else in the race because I'd be hanging out at the back, and eventually I'd kind of move my way up to the back of the middle or the front of the middle. And I felt like I was almost meeting everybody except for the front of the pack people for a lot of these ones and not running. And so, no, I didn't feel like I was pushing cutoffs, but I was very intimidated if I was going to even finish Tour. I didn't know what I was getting into. And the first time I did Tour, I mean, I was nowhere close. I mean, I think the cutoff's like 150 hours and I finished in 1:33. I almost got close to qualifying for Glossier, and that was with a great time. I mean, I was having long dinners with like I had gone out to hike the Tour de France course before, and I backpacked it over 2 weeks. And my thought is that if I spent all my time taking pictures while I was out there, it would give myself a better chance of finishing, because I would think it's so scenic and spend all my time taking photos and jumping in lakes. So I was like, I'm going to get all my fun out first and then treat the race more seriously. But what ended up happening is I made so many friends at all these huts that were locals when I was out there. So I felt like my Tour journey and I promised everybody I was going to see them again during the race. So it ended up becoming my motivator. Like, I have to make it to this hut to say hi to this person. And I would spend all my time still being social out there and just had a blast. I just had such a good time out there. And there's some kind of correlation between that, I still think, towards just the focus of the enjoyment of having fun out there.
Yeah.
Whatever that sort of means for you, right? That I know it can sound sort of cliche, right? Just it's all about the fun. I mean, that might mean something different to somebody else if they want to push themselves to certain limits, or it could mean the people you meet or the scenes. For me, sometimes it meant there were certain places on the course I wanted to get to see sunset or to see sunrise. You know, I get very motivated by that where I'm in, and those become the times I might speed up a lot more, or I might sort of sandbag it so I end up at these areas for whatever it is. But I think the journey can be whatever you really want it to be. I mean, you paid. It's not like just because you signed up for the race, you have to run it one way that everybody else runs it. I mean, it's your time, it's your money, and you can kind of do what you want with it. It's really your choice. But yeah, I mean, that Tour was a huge confidence builder for me. I rolled in still. I had a lot of confidence after I thru-hiked it because I knew what the cutoff times were. I knew what my times were with a backpack.
Okay.
And so I was pretty, there were times where I was like, that was 15 minutes after cut with taking a lunch break with a backpack. So I had an idea of what the pacing would look like. And I'm glad I did it, because it's really not, they really make it finishable. They really do. It's more realistic than people think. It's very mentally challenging. It's so hard. It's really long, and you got to just keep going, you know, but like, for someone that's like hard-headed and wants the adventure enough, I think it's like just as doable as anything else. Just because it's harder doesn't mean it's harder to finish. So
Yeah, I think that's a healthy perspective. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a couple things. I think one, what serves you well, and I think a lot of people can take from it, is to really enjoy not just think about the finish line the entire time, or not think about that next cutoff. Just like I tell all my runners that are running it, or a long race like that, like, hey, if you're in a low spot, look up, like, look out and see if you're in Jerome, look at Sedona. I know it's like, hey, that's really far where I have to go, but like, you're on these trails that, what, 1% of the population probably ever gets to go to. You're doing things like, you're out in the middle of nature, you're having a blast. So I think that serves you well. And I think also tactically, what serves you well is, I think when people think about these races and they're training and they're doing all these this running, as soon as it gets to the point where running becomes, I guess, would suboptimal and they have to start hiking, they haven't practiced hiking enough to where, because you are using slightly different muscles, that hurts even more. So then that kind of sets them back. So you've already had that base and you've built a giant diesel engine from your through hike experience.
Yeah, it's amazing that there are some runners that are just amazing hikers. There's some ultra runners I see out there that I don't think they even understand like how good. Like when I see some of the people that are in the front of the pack, and I've been on hikes with some people, I'm like, wow, like you're a really good hiker. And there are people that don't backpack, and I'm blown away. But you're right, for a majority of the field, when most of the runners have been forced to sort of hike, their hiking pace is pretty miserable and a little slow and demoralizing. Like it's almost like a sad hike. Like, now I have to be walking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that starts building my confidence later, because it's like all of a sudden in a 200-mile race, if I'm still hiking even 17, 18, anything that's like an under 20-minute mile on any kind of terrain, sometimes feels like you're flying by people. And so I agree with you, like having a good walk, and sometimes that could just be practice, even just walking around town, like just not driving to places, and just like it doesn't have to even just be on technical trail. It just like get used to like how fast can you just walk without running, right? And so especially if you have runners that already like have been doing this for a lot longer than I have. I mean, I've learned it takes years and years to build up this zone two base of running that I'm still working on, right? Like I still see improvements year over year. Maybe I'm shaving off 30 seconds a minute or something like that, which adds up on a 200 miler, but it takes a long time, you know? And so if you have people that have been running that long and they learn that really efficient walk, they can do some damage out there now, you know?
Yeah.
I just had to come into it the other way, thinking, okay, eventually if I kind of, and I also had almost the wrong mindset. My mindset was that I thought I had a fear that running was going to really mess up my hiking into these. So a lot of it wasn't, I wanted to just hike. I was just really convinced that if I ran at all, that I wasn't going to be able to hike the same way. I was going to look like those other people that were running and then they used to walk slow. But it's really not true. I mean, just being able to flow into one to another, that those transitions, those hike to run to hike transitions, it's amazing how much that speeds up your mile, right? Even if it was just like, even if my walking pace is, for me, if it's 18-minute miles and I learn how to just jog a little bit here and there, and that brought it down to a 1645 or 1630. I mean, I learned that like that doesn't crush me, and I can still, you know, that didn't mess up my hiking in the next mile. And so being able to tinker around with that now is fun to do, right? Now you have a lot of tools to play around with. And I think I start getting into those zones in my head later. I'm like, okay, I have this gait for my fast walk, this gait for my chill walk, this gait for, you know, and I try to switch them up though too, to not use the same muscles all the time.
I think it's a good point. And I'm going to tag a little bit for those who have not run 200, but maybe run 100s. You know, in the 100-mile race, there's the mid to the backpack also, right? And we are dealing with what we call the death march. At some point, people get into this death march. You call it the sad hike. Same concept, right? We're literally just dying. But What I encourage my runners to do, I coach and Steve coaches as well. And Steve, I'm sure you encourage yours as well.
Mm-hmm.
That in those moments of the death march, you want to do everything you can to just try to have some semblance of a shuffle run or some sort of run a little bit that you can just for a short period of time, just to kind of break up the monotony of the walk or the hike or whatever you want to call it, because it does help to kind of have that variability. And if you even do it for 15 to 20 seconds every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, it's going to bring your overall pace down just because it moves you a little bit quicker. So I think it's a great point. I want to take an opportunity, since I have what I would consider two people who've run thousands of miles, at least over 1,000 miles between the two of you at Cocodona alone, right? Between the two of you, what are the 2 or 3 top things that you believe people who are focusing on doing their first 200, particularly at Cocodona, should focus on for that race to prepare?
You want to go ahead, Steve?
Sure. I mean, my first thing is always I have one athlete doing the 250 there and one athlete doing the Sedona 125. And really what we've been focused on mainly are efficient, like we just talked about, efficient hiking, time on feet, and elevation, just being able to power up and down hills all day long. That's really the top 2 that I have. And then the third one would be, didn't work out well last year because it was cold as hell, but heat training would be the third one for me. I can't control that.
This might be kind of a...
We like odd, Aaron. We like odd.
Yeah.
I was going to say eating while walking, and general efficiency around access to things in your pack. It's amazing just when I'm steadily walking and miniature stoppage time, I always feel like there's somebody that's fumbling around with a jacket and fumbling around with a water bottle and all these things, and they just ran down the hill and ran up and then stopped, and sometimes I don't know if they just made up some excuse to fumble around with something because they just got tired or something, and maybe that's the case. But it's amazing how many people, like, if I'm even just thinking about, I just walked and I end up at the same spot that they were and they were running, just because like they didn't have access to all of like the right things. And was able to like continually move while doing something, like, and peeing and these kind of things might be differently. I'm not going to that level. I do see those marks on the road. I don't know how to pee while walking yet. I haven't even attempted to hone in that skill, but I just mean like, I think it was something that was natural for me coming from through hiking, was that I was just excited to load all of my pockets with snacks and move forward and eat while I walk. And I think it trained my gut well in hindsight. And secondly, it makes you pretty efficient on getting in calories and just knowing where to store your wrappers and get out your food and deal with your gear while you're sort of on the move. And little things like that, I think, add up in those races. And that was just my kind of, they seem to sort of be an afterthought for most people.
It actually, when you said it, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Steve. When you said it, it got my attention because I know that I, in some of my races, have struggled. I think you used the word accessing some of the stuff in my pack. And I realized in the middle of the race, I have it in the wrong spot. Like I can't really get to it. So I have to take my pack off and then fumble around and get to it. And it takes too much time. And I chalked that up as a personal problem for me, that I didn't practice well enough with all the stuff I thought I was going to need in the race and to be able to access it. Because when you, particularly in the early days when I did my first, I would just throw stuff in the back of the pack. Well, I can't reach very well to get all that garbage out of the back. Instead, I had to get better at getting the stuff I was going to use more often closer to where I could easily get to it, and in waist belts and all that kind of stuff too, so that I could have access to it. So I really like the idea of you have this crap, but you can't get to it. And it does slow you down if you don't know how to move forward with it. So I think it's a really good point.
It's so personal too, right? Like I'm not getting to this spot. Like, so, it might be the waist belt. For me, it made me realize I need pockets and stuff in my shorts, and I ended up having my own system. And I think everybody can have their own system. It's not like there's one way to sort of do it, but you're right. If you're thinking about it when you're out training or on training hikes or runs, then little things click. I still find myself doing it like, oh, geez, that was so inefficient, where my poop kit was. I probably should make sure I rethink that and have that in that pocket. Why am I fumbling around so much, you know? And then so that way, like those things start becoming a little bit more routine. Yeah.
So for both of you, you know, you talk about hiking, and you talk about this a lot, and you think about training for it and getting used to walking, getting used to hiking. How much time should I spend in a training run, and how often should I be doing something like that? I guess I say that, and I'm going to kind of keep talking about it, give you some time to think about it, because, you know, I've interviewed people on the other podcast we were talking about before, and Steve a little bit. This guy Jameson, I can't remember his last name, Huda Trail, he's on Instagram. He talks about the fact that he would spend hours upon hours going out on just fast walks and long walks and stuff, and just being on his feet for like 6 to 8 hours easy, right? And eating Chinese food, like incredible human. But those are the types of volumes you talked about with Mike McKnight, that, you know, you had a run coach who was trying to get you out there to do a 3 or 4 hour weekend run. And you're like, I'm not even close to where I want to be on my experience out here. And you're thinking you need more time. So what am I looking at if I really want to become good as a hiker and as a walker in some of these races, to develop that beyond a 2 or 3 hour type of thing? Is that because that's what I'm picking up? Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all based around like what you can do, right? Because most people aren't going to be able to go do like a 6 hour hike during the day on the weekday. So for me, I would start with like a 4 hour hike or 4 hour training block, and I would just stay on the same hill and walk up the hill and run down it. So it'd be like 50-50 almost, or like 2/3 walking, a third running down. And then on the weekend, kind of do the same thing. I know leading up to Mammoth, I did a 12-hour training run on the same hill, just up and down the same hill repeatedly, where it was just hiking up and running down, just so I'm used to being able to hike up things efficiently. And then it's like anything, the more you do it, the more you find your most efficient gait, the more you find the things that work for you, and you get better at using your poles, you get better at lacing your shoes, small things like that. So I usually play around with my athletes who, based on their time commitments, but there is like a minimum amount that you should be doing. And to me, I try to get them close to the elevation gain of the race spread out across the week for a couple weeks before the race.
Any thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, I had a couple. I think it really depends on what your goals are, obviously, and what you're trying to get done with the race that you're targeting. But at least for me, one of the challenges has always been this balance between like what is fun and what's training. I think that's something I've always kind of struggled with. And really my tendency was I just really wanted to just be outside and be hiking all the time. And so it wasn't until recently that, at least for me, I've tried to have some sort of balance, to have more intention when I was going out there, to say like, no, this specifically is a fun day and I'm not going to judge myself on my pace. And I'm out there specifically to like get a lot of time on feet and have a lot of fun. And this one I'm going out with more intention and to actually have a focus for what one, like separating which one, and just combining them together and just saying, well, you know, I went out there and I was having a lot of fun. And then at the end, I just ran back to my car, you know, like I have more, you know, specific intentions between what days are what. And for me, I gotta separate that. That's just what works for go with. So that way I just know that I'm getting a little bit of both. I'm not going to feel like I'm neglecting what's considered training that's going to get in the way of my goals, but I'm also like not going to burn myself out by not having any fun. So I kind of just needed to separate those two for me. And one thing that I've realized recently, and I've actually been enjoying more, is how much pushing my heart rate up and not just staying in low heart rate zones when I'm doing uphill activity actually helps out my hiking efficiency. And so whether that's just kind of walking up hills versus like hiking and trying to keep my heart rate below a certain thing, I'll try to spike my heart rate and do run sort of intervals when I'm going uphill. And I've already started to notice how on the days that I go out for fun, if I'm just hiking and not trying to do that, how much more efficient I've become in hiking. So those are my two thoughts on that.
That's a fantastic answer. Steve, we want them to work hard sometimes, don't we?
Yeah, but I think I might just start prescribing fun days for my athletes.
I thought the same thing.
Awesome. Yeah.
I've got a couple of them. Honestly, I've got a couple that, I want them. They train. We train all the time, right? We train all the time, train.
Yeah.
But we get to the weekend and I'm like, look, you're going to go out for a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour run, but I want you to go out on trails and I really just want you to have fun. And I tell them, I don't care about your pace. And I tell them just to go enjoy the time. I may just say, we're going to call this fun time. Like, I need to just change the language around it, because that's exactly what I'm hoping that they will do, is that I want them to take the pressure off and just get in the environment and to kind of just play around with their gear, get used to taking their stuff with them and just being on their feet for a certain amount of time. And so I like some things are training and some things are fun. And to kind of answer that question, I think it's a really good point. So what are you going to say, Steve?
I was going to say, it's pretty funny that you have to start prescribing fun days for people.
So, okay, for those listening, like, that's real.
I have to do the same thing.
Right, because listen, everybody who's training for races, not everybody, other than Aaron, everybody else is training for races. They're so pigeon focused on that. They've got to get faster, get harder, get better each week, and they've got to hit a certain amount. And they allow that pressure to be something that strips away the enjoyment of the entire training to get there in the first place, or the time to get there. I don't even call it training line. So I think if we could all relax a bit, that, and enjoy the entire process, then on race day, it's just a celebration of what you've been doing in the first place. And I think we just add so much on top of it that does get in the way. So I'm not disagreeing at all with that. And I think it's all self-inflicted. Time is flying. And so I want to kind of move on real quick. So I want to stick into the mindset now of a 200. Okay, because you mentioned, I think maybe even before the show, about hallucinations and everything. But before we get there, you do races that have taken you up to 120 hours and stuff. Like, they can take days to finish some of these races. You do start to hallucinate towards the end. But when you are alone for so much time, like, what goes through your mind, and how do you not lose your mind?
Who's to say I haven't?
Well, you're going to tell me one way or the other.
So now, I haven't hallucinated in a long time. And maybe that's because I've gotten just a little bit quicker, and that's afforded me more sleep, which then has afforded me sort of not to hallucinate. We'll see what happens this year at Cocodona. Maybe I missed that and want to see if I can get back to that a little bit. I have a tough time with it. I really just don't like being sleep deprived when I'm out there. It's one of the things I think I dislike about the experience the most. Now, later on, it can make for some really great stories, right? That I have, and I go all day around things I've seen and crazy things that have happened, especially in those first few 200s I've done. But it's not a really comfortable experience when I feel like my eyes are shutting just like on the trail. And so I actually don't, it depends what your goals are out there. I understand that. And it's so different how different people can handle sleep deprivation. It's so different on the person. But generally, I think that by sleeping, you're going to get that time back anyways. That slow moving zombie, like that death march that's produced not by fatigue, but by sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
You're going to get that time back, I think, from sleeping. And then for me, you also get the fun back too. You get both in one. And it really starts to roll later. Like when you sleep, it's like, and you start seeing other people that haven't, and then you start passing people, and then you start feeling like you're flying, even though you might not be, right? And it's like a trickle effect. So you're like, you're awake, you're aware, you're having more fun, you're getting more confidence because you're not getting past, you're passing people later, And so I think sleep is such a big part of it for those long ones, unless it really depends what your goals are. But for the most part, if people find themselves getting to that any point in the race where your paces are just dipping and you're just dropping and you're struggling to stay awake. And there's obviously so many different ways to do it. Some people just love a quick trail nap to revive them. And there's a lot of different strategies, but for me, getting some real sleep out there, I just have such a better time. And I have I think I get that time back though, anyways, for the most part. So I think that's a big piece of keeping focused and keeping your mind straight out there. Yeah.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah. Any mantras you have?
I don't have any general ones. I do make mantras though, specific to different races.
Really?
I mean, I'd have to go back into my phone and try to look at my notes for what they've been in. But a lot of time, like in Cocodona, for example, I've had words of the day, like patience. Like one of the year, I think it was like patient. The first day was patience. Then it was persistence. Then it was perseverance. And then, and so like I've had like a word of the day just to keep me like focused. Like this is the theme of the day.
I'm going to pause you there. I like that. Like I've never done a 200-mile race. We talked about this before. I'm not sure if I ever will. Beside the point, but in the idea of having a word of the day would not be something I would ever have thought about, even kind of encouraging somebody to think about, because, I think in terms of mantras, like you're going to say the same thing until it's ad nauseum and it's always in your brain. But having a different theme for a given day, I think, is a whole new way of thinking about a multi-day type race. I like that a lot. Yeah. Steve, do you do anything like that?
Not like that, but I have done the one where, and it almost is counterintuitive, where you say like the patience on that first day. Like that's a big one because you don't want to get out ahead of yourself, especially on that first day, because it's really hard to come back from. But I think that's a great strategy.
So I actually found it. So it was positive, patient, persistence, and powerful. So it was like first day you're staying positive, and then you're being really patient, and then you roll into the persistence, and then you roll into generating your power later.
Wait. What was day 5?
Well, I was planning on being done in 4, so
day 5. Survive.
You gotta have a backup.
Survive. Yeah. Finish. I love it. I think that's great, man. What were you going to say? I'm sorry, Steve.
Oh, no, I just said yeah.
All right. So one more thing about this. Before the show, we sent you a series of questions because we like to get an idea of kind of where people are and what goes through their minds and get an idea of who they are and what makes them tick. And it helps us kind of lay the groundwork of where we're going to go. And so some of our guests think this is what we're going to talk about the entire time, and they're like surprised that we didn't spend the entire time on them. However, we sometimes bring up a question that they answer because we want to talk about it on the show. And you have one of those that we were very curious about. And it was, what have you learned about yourself through ultra running? And you said the relationship between challenging myself in ultras and how that relates to real life and business challenges. So how's it helped you with real life and business?
Wow. It gets so deep because I found so many like correlations, and I think it probably depends on you guys know if you're out there coaching. I mean, it's a very entrepreneurial type thing though anyways, but you start thinking about things like, what's my relationship with being uncomfortable? What's my mindset when things get challenging? What's the balance of of having fun and still sort of challenging yourself? I mean, there's a lot of, I think the biggest thing for me is like, there's so many correlations, right? Like if you're on your own business journey, you're being entrepreneurial, just trying to stay patient for the long journey, right? Like it's not a sprint, right? And it's easy to like get impatient. So I think ultra running's, there's a certain feeling that comes out of it. And I think the inaugural year of Cocodona is the thing that hit home with that, right? And one of the reasons I've kept on coming back, right? We can all say, okay, we did the really hard thing one time, and this is like, but it's always going to be hard. That race is never going to be easy. And I do really bad in the heat. People are like, why? Even my girlfriend's like, you hate the heat. Why do you keep going back? It's because it's really, 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 really hard. I know it's going to be hard every year. And at least there's like some sort of like really hard thing I have to go face. And there's a feeling when I kind of came out of that on the inaugural year, and at the time I was running a business and I had a bunch of employees, and I just walked out of there and it just felt like there wasn't anything that I was going to face with somebody else that was going to be harder than what I just did. It really felt that way. So it does something with my confidence. And also the ability of being super present, right? It's easy to be like bouncing around in your head and thinking about what your next thought was. But I found myself being more present for like other people through that journey by being present in nature. And so I was able to walk out and like, I was almost more ready to be there for like other people's issues, if they were like my employees, for example. And so you just have so many correlations when especially when you're doing like a multiple day event right there, right? You're looking at this like it could be like a little micro 5 days or 1 week of what an entire lifespan of a business looks like. Like you need a big picture strategy. You need, everyday words of the day extractics, which could be like a multiple year plan. You got to think about, how you're going to execute, what things you have to do day to day to go accomplish this goal. And there's a lot of things that just the practice of what you have to do to go prepare for something like that, let alone accomplish it and then finish it, that do correlate towards things in business. And it always kind of felt like there were lessons out there. Like, and I think this is sort of like maybe part of the magic that occurs that only I think occurs in these multiple days. And you'll find out, once you get there on day 3 and you don't know what it is. You could plan on it all day, but you don't know what it is. And sometimes it's on the other side. And, day 1 could be super fun. Day 2 for me, my body hates me. It's like, what the hell are we doing? I mean, day 2 is almost entirely miserable. And then my body flips into a next gear and it's like, this is what we're doing every day. And then somewhere on the other side, some kind of magic typically occurs and you get some sort of clarity and it comes in, it can come in. So it comes when you least expect it. You don't know when it's going to come. You don't know what it's going to look like. And I call it, it's like, it's kind of magical. It's just some sort of piece of magic and everything sort of seems to like make sense there. And then you finish the race and your body might hurt and it recovers after a couple of days. But even in the weeks following that, I think it's a very prime time to go do stuff that's important in your life. I mean, for me, I like to spend it around family. I mean, a lot of people get irritated from their family. I found it's the best time that like I can't be irritated. Like you bring it at me, like I'm ready, So I think I used to schedule, business. Now I made the mistake off the inaugural year. I scheduled a bunch of business meetings like on the Monday following the race, thinking I was going to finish on Friday and be rested. You might want to give yourself a little bit more time than that, right? But I do think the amount of mental clarity you get, and I'm sure it's a hodgepodge of stuff, right? You got all the right endorphins flowing and you've maybe been disconnected from your phone and out in the presence of nature and been present and had to overcome challenges. There's probably a hodgepodge of reasons mixed into like a pool that creates that. But I do think that an experience like that, then you come out of it and then there starts to be a lot of individual lessons that can be learned, that can be applied towards your business, really, whatever it is. So I tried to speak a couple to maybe what mine are. Maybe I'm not doing a great job of explaining it. It seems a little intangible that's out there, but
no, I think it's great.
But it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I echo that wholeheartedly, especially with the one with the being present, because it's the only time you can really be present in anything you're doing because you have to be. And Cocodona always has a spot in my heart because after I did it, kind of like you, where you were like, hey, there's nothing anybody can do to me that I haven't already done myself and wasn't so hard. I mean, it helped me eventually quit corporate America and start my own business. So that gave me the confidence to do that. I was like, if I could plan this, do this, finish it, survive it, I can run a business, I can coach, things like that. So you do have that kind of clarity out there.
Overcoming adversity, expecting the unexpected. Yeah, there's a ton of themes there.
God, it is fascinating to me because so I believe a lot of what y'all are saying is true. Like, I'm not going to disagree with you. And I would tell you that people who run these shorter distances that are still ultras would say that they kind of get a lot of the life-changing type experiences as well. There is, though, to me, a difference in the way that I would communicate this versus the way y'all are currently communicating. And I think in the shorter distances, we tend to be very hyper-focused on the tactical execution, the hour by hour execution, the getting things done. what we're going to do for this hour, this hour, this hour. And I think you do all that planning in the 200 plus races as well. But you've got this broader window of time that you give better latitude to allow this freedom to not be so hyper focused on every moment of the race going good or bad, is my belief, based on the way y'all discuss it. Mm-hmm. I could be completely wrong because I've never run one. Mm-hmm. The other thing that caught my attention was Steve, I've heard you say this in other podcast episodes when we talk to other folks. You both have alluded to this idea around day 2 really, really sucking, and then day 3 being some epiphany of just happiness again. And I don't know if it's because you're past the halfway point. I don't know if it's, you both have described it in different places as, your body's like, oh, hey, this is cool. We can do this, right? Is it truly an endorphin? Your body is recovered, feels good, and we can keep moving? Or have you just kind of accepted your fate and you're moving forward?
What do you think?
Dang it.
Well, I mean, I think there's a piece of it that you've already been stripped away, right? So all of these very likely, things like you can't help yourself, but your expectations coming in, or maybe your ego-driven reasons for maybe wanting something or being out there, and all the different elements. Like there's who knows how many different elements and challenges that you've you've had to overcome along the ways, big and small. Chafing, blistered toes, losing toenails, heat, dehydration. Like there's been so many things, right? And so you're in a pretty raw state. And I think that if you're open to it and you're open-minded enough, you're probably the most like susceptible, might be the right word, to sort of allowing what has to sort of come up, I think. I don't know. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, I think you said 2 things there that, again, I can echo, is the ego, because there's no ego left anymore when you're out there, especially because one thing for me too is if you look up, I realize also how small I am, not in just my 5'8" frame, but how small I am compared to the giant mountains we're climbing and nature out there. So it's like you really are like, you're just a being, and then that kind of takes over a little bit, and then the rawness of it, you are like, you're probably at your most vulnerable, thinking about everything. It is, I don't know if it's just something in your body that just says, okay, this is what we're going to do for the rest of our life, almost. Where it's like day 2, your body's fighting it, like it's like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I don't know why we keep doing this, but by the 3rd day, you're like, oh, I guess this is just what happens every time we move now. And that's what I found, is like, that's why your body kind of accepts it. And it's like, oh, we're just going to, I guess we're walking forever.
Yeah. And it's not always day 3, just for clarity, like I've had to hop in 8 miles from the finish line. Like a lot of times it's based around an event. A lot of times it could be just, a lot of times for me, it's based around something that really triggered me. Like either I saw a herd of elk, there's the most amazing sunrise, sunset, some sort of feeling that I was at the right place at the right time, that this is exactly where I like meant to be, that like all of me sort of like fighting the universe of trying to get to a certain spot is like washed away. And it was like, this is exactly where I was supposed to be anyways, And I don't really know when that's going to happen, but that's usually like the thing that like kicks it off.
I like that a lot.
That's awesome.
I like that a lot. I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up a little bit too. Steve, we did not get to nearly all of our questions by any stretch of the imagination.
Never do.
No, we do not. Aaron, I think we have almost a page full of questions that we still didn't touch, just because we weren't sure where we wanted to go. But this has been fantastic. One of the things we do towards the end of each of our episodes, though, is we take a question that comes in from one of our listeners, and we call it Coach's Corner. And we invite our guest to answer the question with us. And sometimes we have good answers. Sometimes we have bad answers. Sometimes, most of the times, our guest has the best answers. And so we just like to go ahead and acknowledge that now up front, that we expect you to have a better answer than us. But our question today comes in from Linda. And we like this question that she sent in. She actually sent in a few of them, but this one we pulled from her list of questions because it seemed perfect for you. And so I have a feeling, Steve, that your response and my response, let me rephrase that. Your response is going to be better than mine too. My response is not even going to be worth mentioning. I'll probably just cut it and don't even bother doing it. But what, if any, benefits do you feel that rucking, also known as hiking with a weighted vest, offers ultra runners? Or would it be better to spend that time running? That's the question.
I mean,
Steve, do you think we're qualified to answer this question? I don't know.
No, probably not. Aaron should probably go first. But we usually let our guest go after.
I know. Steve, you can go first.
Yeah, let me go after. That was my first thought. It's like, I don't know if I feel qualified. That feels very training specific. So,
Steve, you got a response.
I mean, I would say one depends really on what you're training for. If it is, I mean, it's going to have benefits either way, if you're doing 50K, 100K, whatever. But if you are really in a race where you're going to be doing a majority of hiking and walking, then by all means, put one on, once or twice a week or whenever you have it prescribed, that kind of thing. But if you're trying to do like a fast 50K or something like that, then I would probably spend more time in zone RPE 4 or 5 than I would, rucking or hiking.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would echo a good chunk of that. I think it depends on the goal of the race. If it's a time goal and it's a pacing goal, you're going to probably want to do a little bit more running to kind of make sure you can maximize some of your running efficiencies. On that note, though, I do find that I don't call it rucking. I call it hiking with a weighted pack, walking with a weighted pack, whatever you want to call it, or a weighted vest rather. Is that I have found that particularly for those who are new to the sport that are going to wear a hydration pack for the first time in a race, they're going to go do a 50-mile race or 100-mile race. And they're going to be out there for 10 to 30 hours, whatever that thing is. They're not used to wearing a hydration pack on their back, which is going to have a ton of water or a ton of gear or a ton of things they probably won't ever use, but they're going to carry a lot of stuff with them. And they're not used to doing that. And even in their training, they don't load it up. They don't put all that stuff in it. And sometimes they carry a handheld instead because it's just easier and they're only going out for this run. I have found that they have back challenges. They're struggling with just being able to support the weight for such a long time. All of that starts falling apart. And so I encourage them, if they're not used to wearing a hydration pack fully loaded in their training, then I encourage them to try a weighted vest as a way of kind of forcing that equation, if you will. So that's where I will pull in that. So it really depends on the person's goals, but that's some of the advantages I've seen from weighted vest as well. And to give a different angle from where you could have come from, both of you, because I can't measure. Aaron, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Linda, for your question. Hello, Linda. My first thought, and maybe I have the terminology wrong, but it's like, forget the weighted vest and stuff, just practice a fully loaded kit of what you're carrying for sure. Like, and go on the top end of that. Like if that's, full 2-liter bladder with a few other bottles, so you're carrying 3 to 4 liters, even if it's a short hike, like hike that stuff up and pour it out. And then don't put that impact on your body, like jogging downhill. Like that might be unnecessary load. But I think like working that in to carry it up, you're probably getting two things. You're going to get used to that pack with that weight, and then it's going to feel lighter when you're hiking with that weight, when you're going uphill. And you don't necessarily have to do that with putting that much load by just like crushing your body with a heavy pack, like running downhill or something. So I think that's another thought, is just like carry the water up, drink the water, or if it's the shorter hike, just dump that water out and then run down later. And also mixing it up. I don't think it's all one or doing the other. And probably it's, like just to say like, maybe just do all of your stuff weighted. Like if you do that one day, the next day, then just grab the hand bottle and go rip a run. And then, so you get a little bit of both. Yeah. I think mixing it up is probably good. So
I like that answer. I actually like that idea of carrying weighted vest, or either with a loaded bladder and dumping the bladder at the top of the hill and coming back down without it, like dropping that weight so you can jog back down and run back down without the heavy pounding of the weighted vest. I think it's great. It's just one more thing on that topic, excuse me. The other advantage of this, particularly on those who have signed up for a race that has mandatory gear, is sometimes those mandatory gear packs, I mean, it can be heavy. And I think getting used to being able to carry that weight is a huge advantage because they're going to force you to. And so you might as well get
I'm such a gram weenie, you know, it gets from being like ultralight thru hiker, right? You start scrutinizing that stuff. So the nice part about doing that, and I understand this is an expensive slippery slope to get down, but you come back and maybe you're like, God, that pack was heavy. And then my brain starts going to, okay, well, how do you shave an ounce off of that jacket? And how do you shave an ounce off of that, that water carry? And then how to make your pack lighter? And then the next thing you know, it's like, you still have your mandatory gear kit, but maybe you shaved off a few pounds.
Yeah.
I can't help by thinking like that, I'm like, I know trash doesn't weigh that much, but God, I get so excited going to these aid stations to like dump my trash. Like it just made me float afterwards,
That's fantastic. I agree 100%. Linda, thank you for taking the time to send in the question. We've got a couple more of your questions we're going to include in future episodes too, but we figured this one would be perfect for you, Aaron, because it was related to hiking and we thought ideal. So thank you again.
And as usual, he had a better answer than we did.
Yeah, they do. It's bad. We always recognize the fact. But again, thank you, Aaron, for having a better answer too. But I really want to thank Linda for sending it in. So if anybody else is listening and they have a question they'd like our guest to answer better than us, we'd love to have that sent in as well. And Aaron, first off, thank you for taking the time to be with us. You are joining us from your van, doing some van life with us. And so we appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today and being a guest on the show. And with Cocodona coming up, I believe it is in less than a month from today. I think it's May 2nd. Super excited to see how you do. Right, I know.
I probably should start training.
You should. Well, no, you can call in a couple days early and just get ready. Okay. I think that's what you've done before. Right.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Really do. It was good chatting with you guys. It's great joining you. This is my van dog back here, Maverick.
Nice.
He's got a Cocodona hat on. We made him a Cocodona hat. So
nice.
You are awesome. And I love the idea of making sure that you are not just trying to train, but you're also having fun while you're out there too. And I think that is some really good, I think it's a good mindset for everybody, not just for listeners, but even for Steve and I, really just to kind of sometimes always have fun because why else are we doing it in the first place, right? Like it's about being out there and enjoying the time out there. So I appreciate you just kind of bring a little bit of truth with that as well. But anyway, Aaron, again, thank you so much for joining us. For those listening, thank you for taking the time to download the episode and listening into Aaron. If you've got any questions for him, Aaron, what is the best way that they could reach out to you?
Instagram, I'm Mitten Madness.
Mitten Madness.
That's probably Mitten Madness. Yeah.
Is it MITTEN Madness?
It is.
Okay.
I think so.
I love that you're checking.
Yes. MITTEN MADNESS. Yes.
Mitten Madness. Yeah. So if you want to keep up with Aaron, make sure you check him out on Instagram at Mitten Madness and give him a follow. But definitely give him an encouragement as he is taking on another 200-mile race. And Aaron, again, thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you all soon. See you, man. Bye now.
See you guys. Thanks.
See ya.